The noose swayed in the hot Arizona wind, while Elena Martinez stood on the wooden platform, with her chin raised and her dark eyes blazing defiance at the crowd gathered below, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her beg for a mercy she knew would never come. It was the summer of 1878 in Tombstone, a mining town that had sprung up like a weed in the desert, full of fortune seekers and dangerous men who made their own rules. Elena had arrived 6 months earlier with her father, a Mexican rancher who had purchased land on the outskirts of town, hoping to build a life for his daughter after her mother's death. But 3 weeks ago, her father had been shot dead in a dispute over water rights with a powerful rancher named Clayton Briggs. And now Briggs had convinced the corrupt town marshal that Elena had stolen cattle from his herd. It was a lie, but in a town where Mexican families had few allies and even fewer rights, the truth mattered little. The marshal, a thick-necked man named Dalton, who smelled of whiskey and tobacco, tightened the rope around her neck while she stood perfectly still. Her hands were bound behind her back, and her long black hair whipped across her face, but she made no sound. She would not cry. She would not plead. If they were going to murder her for a crime she did not commit, she would face death the way her father had taught her to face everything in life with honor and courage. "Any last words, girl?" Marshal Dalton asked, his breath hot against her ear. Elena turned her head slightly and spat at his feet. The crowd gasped, and Dalton's face turned red with rage. He raised his hand to strike her, but a voice cut through the murmur of the crowd like a knife through silk. "That is enough." The voice was deep and calm, carrying an authority that made even Dalton pause. Elena looked toward the source and saw a tall man pushing through the crowd. He wore dusty leather chaps over dark trousers, a worn blue shirt, and a black hat pulled low over his eyes. A gun belt sat on his hips, the holster tied down in the manner of someone who knew how to use it. His face was sun-bronzed and angular, with a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble, and his eyes were an unusual shade of gray that seemed to see everything at once. "Who the hell are you?" Dalton demanded, stepping away from Elena to face the newcomer. "Name is Cole Hartley," the man said, stopping at the base of the platform. "I have been riding through these parts for the past month, and I happened to witness the incident Miss Martinez is accused of committing." The crowd stirred with interest. My property, and no one was around to see my property, and no one was around to see it. "That is because there was no theft," Cole said evenly, his gaze never leaving Briggs. "I was camped near your northern pasture 2 nights ago, when I saw 3 of your own men cut out a dozen head of cattle and drive them toward the border. They were planning to sell them and pocket the money. When they saw Miss Martinez riding near the area the next morning, they decided to frame her for their crime." Briggs sputtered, his face turning purple. "That is a damned lie. Why would my own men steal from me?" "Because you do not pay them enough," Cole replied with a slight shrug. "I heard them talking about it around their campfire. They figured you would never miss a few head, and even if you did, you would blame it on the Mexicans like you always do." The crowd erupted in conversation. Elena stared at the stranger in shock. She had never seen this man before in her life, and yet here he was, risking his own neck to defend her. But was he telling the truth, or was this some kind of game? Marshal Dalton looked uncertain now, glancing between Briggs and Cole. "You got any proof of this?" "I can describe the men in detail," Cole said. "One has a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. Another is missing 2 fingers on his right hand. The third has a tattoo of a snake on his forearm. If those match any of your hired hands, Briggs, I suggest you question them before you hang an innocent woman." Briggs's expression shifted from outrage to something closer to fear. Elena noticed it too, and hope flickered in her chest for the first time since they had dragged her from her cell that morning. "This is ridiculous," Briggs blustered, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Marshal, continue with the execution. This drifter is obviously lying to cause trouble." But Dalton was not as stupid as he looked. He could see the doubt spreading through the crowd, and he knew that hanging Elena now would raise too many questions. "Hold on," he said, raising a hand. "If what this man says is true, we need to look into it before we proceed." "Look into it?" Briggs exploded. "I paid you good money to handle this situation." The moment the words left his mouth, Briggs realized his mistake. The crowd went silent, and even Dalton paled. Cole smiled, a cold expression that did not reach his eyes. "Sounds like a confession to me," Cole said quietly. Dalton's hand moved toward his gun, but Cole was faster. His revolver appeared in his hand so quickly that Elena barely saw the movement, and suddenly the marshal was staring down the barrel of a Colt .45. "I would not do that," Cole said, his voice still calm. "Take the rope off the lady, now." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Dalton slowly reached up and loosened the noose around Elena's neck, lifting it over her head. Her legs nearly buckled with relief, but she forced herself to remain standing. She would not show weakness, not even now. "Untie her hands," Cole ordered. Dalton complied, cutting the ropes that bound Elena's wrists. She rubbed the raw skin where the rope had chafed, her mind racing. What was happening? Who was this man, and why was he helping her? "Miss Martinez, come down here," Cole said, still keeping his gun trained on Dalton. Elena walked carefully down the steps of the platform, her legs shaky after standing for so long. When she reached Cole's side, he stepped slightly in front of her, positioning himself between her and the crowd. "Now," Cole said, addressing the gathered townspeople, "I suggest someone ride out to the Briggs Ranch and bring in those 3 men I described. If they are not guilty, they will have no trouble explaining where they were 2 nights ago. But if they are guilty, then Miss Martinez deserves an apology and compensation for the time she spent in jail on false charges." "This is an outrage!" Briggs shouted, but several men in the crowd were already nodding in agreement with Cole. The tide had turned, and everyone could feel it. A tall, lean man with a deputy's badge stepped forward. Elena recognized him as Tom Wheeler, one of the few honest lawmen in Tombstone. "I will ride out and bring them in," he said. "If what you say is true, stranger, justice will be served." Cole nodded. "I appreciate that, deputy. In the meantime, I think Miss Martinez and I will wait at the hotel. She has been through enough for one day." Before anyone could protest, Cole holstered his gun and placed a gentle hand on Elena's elbow, guiding her through the crowd. People stepped aside to let them pass, some looking ashamed, others simply curious. Elena walked beside him in a daze, barely able to process what had just happened. They crossed the dusty main street and entered the Tombstone Hotel, a modest 2-story building with a small lobby and a tired-looking clerk behind the desk. Cole paid for 2 rooms, then led Elena upstairs to a room at the end of the hall. "You should rest," he said, opening the door for her. "You are safe now." Elena stepped inside, then turned to face him. Her hands were trembling and she clenched them into fists to stop it. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Saw you standing on that platform with the rope around your neck. Everyone was watching to see if you would break. But you stood there like a queen facing her executioners, proud and unafraid. That kind of courage is rare, Miss Martinez. It deserved to be honored, not buried. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Everything you said about those men and the cattle, was it true?" A hint of a smile touched Cole's lips. "Not a word of it, but I have been in enough towns like this to know how these things work. Briggs is the type of man who would absolutely cheat and steal if he thought he could get away with it, and his men probably are underpaid and resentful. When I threw out those accusations, I was gambling that his reaction would give him away, and it did." "But what if the deputy does not find anything?" Elena asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "What if they decide to hang me anyway?" "They will not," Cole said with quiet certainty. "Briggs made a mistake when he admitted he paid off the marshal. Enough people heard it, that word will spread, and the town will turn against him. By tonight, he will be the one running, not you. Trust me." Elena wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. "I do not even know you," she said. "Why would you risk your life for a stranger?" Cole was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "My sister was about your age when she was accused of something she did not do. Nobody stood up for her, and she was hanged before I could get back to town to help her. That was 5 years ago, and I have regretted it every day since. When I saw you today, standing there so brave and alone, I knew I could not let it happen again." The pain in his voice was raw and real, and Elena felt something shift inside her chest. "Your sister," she said softly. "Cole, your sister," she said softly. Cole nodded, his jaw tight. "Get some rest, Miss Martinez. I will be in the room next door if you need anything." He turned to leave, but Elena reached out and caught his sleeve. "Wait," she said. "My name is Elena, and thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to live." Cole looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. For a moment, something warm flickered in his gray eyes. "You are welcome, Elena," he said quietly. Then he gently pulled away and left, closing the door behind him. Elena stood alone in the hotel room, her heart pounding. She walked to the window and looked out at the street below, watching the people go about their business as if the world had not just shifted on its axis. She was alive. Against all odds, she was still breathing, still standing, still here. And it was all because of a stranger with sad eyes and a quick gun. She touched her throat where the rope had been and felt the raw skin there. It would heal, she knew, but the memory of this day would stay with her forever. Hours later, as the sun began to set and the desert air cooled, there was a knock on her door. Elena opened it cautiously and found Cole standing there, hat in hand. "The deputy found the men," he said. "All three of them matched my descriptions by pure luck, and under questioning, they confessed to planning a cattle theft. Briggs tried to flee town, but they caught him before he could get far. You are cleared of all charges, Elena. You are free." The relief was so overwhelming that Elena's knees buckled. Cole caught her before she could fall, his strong arms supporting her weight. "Easy," he murmured. "It is over now. You are safe." Elena clung to him, her face pressed against his chest, and finally allowed herself to cry. All the fear and grief and rage she had been holding back came pouring out in great, shuddering sobs. Cole held her through it, one hand gently stroking her hair, saying nothing. He simply let her break apart and held her pieces together until she could breathe again. When the storm passed, Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I am sorry," she said, embarrassed by her loss of control. "Do not be," Cole said. "You have earned the right to cry." Elena looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time. He was younger than she had initially thought, probably no more than 28 or 29. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of long days in the sun and hard years on the trail, but his face was kind. She found herself wondering what his story was, where he had come from, and where he was going. "Will you have dinner with me?" she asked impulsively. "It is the least I can do to thank you." Cole hesitated, and for a moment Elena thought he would refuse, but then he nodded. "I would like that." They went downstairs to the hotel dining room, a small space with a dozen tables covered in checkered cloths. The food was simple but good, beef stew and fresh bread, and Elena realized she had not eaten in days. She devoured her meal while Cole ate more slowly, watching her with quiet amusement. "Tell me about yourself," Elena said between bites. "Where are you from?" "Texas, originally," Cole said. "A small town near San Antonio. My father was a rancher, and I grew up working cattle. After my sister died, I could not stay there anymore. Too many memories. So I started drifting, taking work where I could find it. I have been a ranch hand, a deputy, a scout for the army. I go where the wind takes me." "That sounds lonely," Elena observed. Cole shrugged. "It can be, but it is also freedom. No ties, no responsibilities, no one counting on me to be anything other than what I am." "And what are you?" Elena asked. Cole thought about that for a moment. "A man trying to outrun his ghosts, I suppose." Elena nodded slowly. An argument about water access to our land. The marshal ruled it self-defense because Briggs claimed my father drew on him first. But that was a lie. My father was not even armed. I tried to get justice, but no one would listen to me. Then Briggs accused me of stealing his cattle, and I realized he wanted me dead so he could take our land without any witnesses to what he had done. Cole's expression hardened. "I am sorry, Elena. That is a heavy burden to carry." "I do not know what to do now," Elena admitted. "I have no family left, and the ranch is too much for one person to manage alone. I could sell it, but Briggs would probably just buy it through a proxy and get what he wanted anyway. I feel trapped." "You do not have to decide tonight," Cole said gently. "Give yourself time to grieve and heal. The answer will come." They talked late into the evening, sharing stories and slowly learning each other's edges. Elena told him about growing up on her father's ranch in Mexico, about her mother's death when she was 12, about her dreams of one day opening a school for children who could not afford an education. Cole told her about his childhood in Texas, about his sister Rebecca, who had loved horses and laughter, about the endless sky and open range that had shaped him into the man he was. As the dining room emptied and the lamps burned low, Elena found herself not wanting the night to end. There was something about Cole that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her father died. He did not try to fix her problems or tell her what to do. He simply listened, and in his listening, she found a kind of peace. Finally, they climbed the stairs to their rooms. Been a long time since I had a conversation that mattered. Will you stay in Tombstone for a while? Elena asked, trying to keep the hope out of her voice. Cole looked uncertain. I had not planned on it. I was just passing through when I saw the commotion in the square. Please, Elena said, and then hated herself for begging. She had sworn she would never beg again, and here she was, asking a stranger to stay. But the thought of him leaving, of waking up tomorrow and finding him gone, filled her with a panic she could not name. Cole must have seen something in her face because his expression softened. I will stay for a few days, he said. Make sure you are truly safe and that Briggs does not have any friends who might try to cause trouble. Relief flooded through Elena. Thank you, she whispered. Cole reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering for just a moment against her cheek. Sleep well, Elena, he said, his voice low and warm. Then he was gone, disappearing into his own room, and Elena was left standing in her doorway, with her heart racing and her skin tingling where he had touched her. Over the next several days, Cole became a constant presence in Elena's life. He helped her sort through the legal paperwork related to her father's estate, using his knowledge of the law to make sure she was not cheated. He accompanied her to the ranch, which sat on 20 acres of scrubland with a small house and a barn that needed repairs. Together, they assessed what needed to be done to make the property viable again. Elena watched Cole work, admiring the easy competence with which he handled every task. He could fix a broken fence, gentle a skittish horse, and negotiate with the bank, all with the same calm efficiency. But more than his skills, she appreciated his presence. When he was near, the shadows that haunted her seemed less dark, and the future seemed less frightening. Cole, for his part, found himself drawn to Elena in ways that both surprised and unsettled him. He had meant to stay only a day or two, just long enough to ensure her safety. But as the days stretched into a week, he found excuses to linger. There was always one more thing to fix, one more problem to solve, one more reason to stay. The truth was that Elena had gotten under his skin. Her fierce pride and quiet strength reminded him of his sister, but there was something more, something uniquely her own that captivated him. The way she laughed when he told a bad joke, the way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking, the way she moved through the world with determination despite everything she had lost. She was remarkable, and Cole was falling for her whether he wanted to or not. To him, and said, "You have done so much," to him, and said, "You have done so much for me, Cole. How can I ever repay you?" "You do not owe me anything," Cole said, leaning back against the porch railing. "I helped you because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected payment." "Still," Elena persisted, "you have given up your freedom to help a stranger. That has to mean something." Cole was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Finally, he said, "It does not feel like I have given up anything. These past days with you have been the most content I have felt in years. Usually I am restless, always wanting to move on to the next town, the next job. But here, with you, I feel like I could stay." Elena's breath caught. "Then stay," she said, her voice barely audible over the desert wind. "Stay here, with me. Help me rebuild this ranch, make a life instead of running from one." Cole turned to look at her, his gray eyes intense. "Elena, you do not know what you are asking. I am not the kind of man who settles down. I have spent 5 years drifting because I do not know how to be still. What if I stay and then wake up one morning and realize I made a mistake? What if I hurt you by leaving? What if you stay and realize this is exactly where you are supposed to be?" Elena countered. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers threading through his. "I am not asking you to promise me forever, Cole. I am just asking you to take a chance. We both deserve that much, do not we? After everything we have lost." Cole looked down at their joined hands, his throat tight. He thought about his sister Rebecca, about how she had always told him he needed to stop running from his pain and learn to live with it. He thought about the empty years he had spent wandering from place to place, never belonging anywhere, never letting himself care too much about anyone. And he thought about Elena, brave and beautiful Elena, who had faced death without flinching and was now offering him something he had not dared to hope for in a long time. A home, a purpose, a reason to stay. All right, he said quietly. I will stay, for as long as you will have me. Elena smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. She squeezed his hand, and they sat together in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest and happiest of Cole's life. Working the ranch was backbreaking labor, from dawn to dusk, and sometimes beyond. They repaired the barn, mended miles of fence, rounded up the cattle that had scattered after Elena's father's death, and planted a vegetable garden near the house. Cole hired 2 hands to help with the work, young men from town who needed jobs and were willing to work for fair wages. Through it all, Elena was beside him, never shirking the hard tasks or complaining about the long hours. She could rope and brand cattle as well as any man, and she had a gift for handling the horses that amazed Cole. Together, they slowly brought the ranch back to life. But it was the quiet moments Cole treasured most. The early mornings when they would drink coffee on the porch and watch the sunrise. The evenings when Elena would read aloud from books her mother had loved, while Cole whittled small figures from scrap wood. The nights when they would lie on blankets in the yard, and Elena would teach him the names of the stars in Spanish, while he told her stories about the places he had been. They moved around each other with increasing ease, learning each other's rhythms and habits. Cole discovered that Elena sang while she cooked, old Mexican songs her mother had taught her. Elena learned that Cole had a weakness for sweet things and would do almost anything for a slice of apple pie. They argued sometimes, usually about the best way to handle some ranch problem, but their disagreements never lasted long. They were both too aware of how precious their time together was, to waste it on petty conflicts. As summer faded into fall, their relationship deepened in ways neither of them had anticipated. The accidental touches became more frequent and lingering. The looks they exchanged grew longer and more meaningful. There was a tension building between them, a magnetic pull that grew stronger with each passing day. It finally came to a head on a cool October evening. They had spent the day rounding up strays in the northern pasture, and by the time they returned to the house, both were exhausted and covered in dust. Elena went to the well to wash up, while Cole tended to the horses. When he finished and walked back to the house, he found Elena sitting on the porch steps, her hair damp and loose around her shoulders, looking up at the emerging stars. "Come sit with me," she said, patting the step beside her. Cole sat, acutely aware of how close she was, of the clean scent of soap and water that clung to her skin. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the desert. "Cole," Elena said finally, "I need to tell you something." He turned to look at her, and his heart stuttered at the expression on her face. "A few months, and I know you never a few months, and I know you never intended to stay this long, but I cannot keep pretending that what I feel is just gratitude or friendship. When I am with you, I feel alive in a way I never have before. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be braver and stronger, and when I imagine my future, you are always in it. I love you, Cole Hartley, and I needed you to know that." Cole stared at her, his mind reeling. He had known his feelings for Elena were growing deeper, but he had been afraid to examine them too closely, afraid of what they might mean. But hearing her say those words, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes, broke something open inside him. "Elena," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I love you too. I think I have loved you since the moment I saw you standing on that platform, refusing to bow to fear. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever met, and being with you has shown me that I was not really living before. I was just existing. You have given me a reason to stop running, a reason to build instead of drift. You have given me hope." Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks, but she was smiling. "Then why do you look so sad?" "Because I am terrified," Cole admitted. "I am terrified that I will disappoint you, that I will not be enough, that I will wake up one day, and the wanderlust will return, and I will break your heart. I do not want to hurt you, Elena. You deserve better than a broken man who does not know how to stay." Elena reached up and cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me, Cole Hartley," she said fiercely. "You are not broken. You are healing, just like I am, and yes, maybe there will be days when you want to leave, when the open road calls to you. But I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to be honest, to talk to me when you are struggling, to let me help you carry your pain the way you have helped me carry mine. We can figure this out together, if you are willing to try." Cole searched her face, looking for any sign of doubt, but all he saw was love and determination. This woman, this incredible woman, was offering him everything he had ever wanted and been too afraid to ask for. "I am willing," he said, his voice breaking. "God help me, Elena. I am willing to try." Then he kissed her, pouring all his fear and hope and love into that kiss. Elena kissed him back with equal passion, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body pressing against his. It was a kiss that sealed a promise, that marked a beginning, that said more than words ever could. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. "I know it is fast, and I know I should probably court you properly, but I do not want to wait. I want to wake up beside you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build a future with you, have a family with you, grow old with you. Marry me, Elena." Elena laughed through her tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They were wed in early November by the local minister in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Tom Wheeler, the deputy who had helped clear Elena's name, stood as Cole's witness, and Maria Gonzalez, an older Mexican woman who had been friends with Elena's mother, stood as Elena's. It was small and intimate, exactly what they both wanted. Elena wore a white dress that had belonged to her mother, altered to fit her frame. Cole bought a new suit for the occasion, the first he had owned in years. As they exchanged vows under the big cottonwood tree near the house, promising to love and honor each other for all their days, Cole felt a peace settle over him that he had not known was possible. The months that followed were a time of growth and discovery. Marriage, Cole learned, was both easier and harder than he had imagined. There were moments of pure joy, like the first time he and Elena made love as husband and wife, or the morning he woke to find her curled against his side, her head on his chest, and realized this was his life now. But there were also challenges, learning to share space and decisions, navigating disagreements, figuring out how to be partners in every sense of the word. Through it all, they held to the promise they had made to each other to be honest, to communicate, to face their problems together rather than alone. When Cole had a bad day and felt the old restlessness creeping in, Elena would saddle their horses and they would ride out into the desert together, not talking, just being. The open space and Elena's presence would ease the tension in his chest, reminding him that freedom did not have to mean solitude. When Elena woke from nightmares about the hanging, reliving the feel of the rope around her neck, Cole would hold her and talk to her in that low, calm voice of his until her breathing steadied and the fear receded. He never told her the dreams would go away completely, because they both knew that was not how trauma worked, but he promised her she would never face the darkness alone, and that was enough. By the spring of 1879, the ranch was thriving. They had built up a respectable herd of cattle, and Cole had negotiated contracts with several buyers in Tucson who appreciated the quality of their stock. Elena had also started taking in horses to train, a side business that quickly proved lucrative. Her skill and patience with the animals earned her a reputation throughout the territory, and people came from miles around to have her work with their horses. One warm May evening, as they sat on the porch watching another spectacular sunset, Elena took Cole's hand and placed it on her stomach. "Feel that?" she asked, her eyes shining. Cole felt the slight swell beneath his palm and looked at her in wonder. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Elena nodded, her smile radiant. "I am with child. We are going to have a baby, Cole." For a moment, Cole could not speak. Joy and terror warred within him. A baby. He was going to be a father. The responsibility of it was overwhelming, but as he looked at Elena's glowing face, he felt something shift inside him. This was not a burden. This was a gift. "We are going to have a baby," he repeated, and then he was laughing and pulling Elena into his arms, spinning her around while she shrieked with laughter. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, his hands cradling her face. "I love you," he said. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I know," Elena said, smiling against his lips. "I love you too." The pregnancy was not easy. Elena suffered from sickness in the early months and had to cut back on the physical work of the ranch. Cole hired more hands to help and took on as much as he could himself, determined that Elena would not overexert herself. He was protective to the point of being overbearing, and Elena had to remind him more than once that she was pregnant, not fragile. But Cole could not help himself. Every time he thought about the life growing inside Elena, the child that was half him and half her, he felt a fierce need to protect them both. He had lost so much in his life already. He could not bear the thought of losing them too. As Elena's belly grew and the baby's presence became more real, Cole found himself making plans for the future in ways he never had before. He drew up blueprints for adding rooms onto the house. He started building a cradle from smooth, polished oak. He talked to Elena about schools and education, about teaching their child to ride and read and think for themselves. "You are going to be a wonderful father," Elena told him one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest and his hand resting on her swollen stomach. "How do you know?" Cole asked, voicing the fear that kept him awake some nights. "What if I'm not good at it? What if I do something wrong?" "Then you will learn and do better next time," Elena said simply. "That is what parents do, Cole. We try our best and hope it is enough. But I have seen how you are with the horses, how patient and gentle you are. I have seen how you treat me, with respect and love. Our child will be lucky to have you." Cole kissed the top of her head, her words soothing the worried places in his heart. "I am the lucky one," he murmured. "I was lost before I met you, Elena. You saved me as much as I saved you that day." In late December, as winter settled over the Arizona desert and the nights grew cold, Elena went into labor. It was a long, difficult birth that lasted through the night and into the next day. Cole stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement, even when his own fear threatened to choke him. Maria Gonzalez, who had experience as a midwife, guided Elena through the process with calm expertise. But there were moments when Cole saw worry flash across her face, and his heart would freeze in his chest. He prayed to a God he had stopped believing in years ago, making desperate bargains and promises if only Elena and the baby would be all right. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry filled the air. Cole watched in awe as Maria lifted a tiny, squirming infant and placed it on Elena's chest. Elena, exhausted but radiant, looked down at their child, with tears streaming down her face. "It is a boy," Maria announced, smiling. "A healthy, strong boy." Cole stared at his son, this tiny person who had his mother's dark hair and his own gray eyes, and felt his entire world shift. He reached out with a trembling hand to touch the baby's impossibly small fingers, and when they wrapped around his thumb, he started to cry. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and loved." They named him Samuel, after Cole's father, with the middle name Roberto, after Elena's father. Samuel Hartley came into the world screaming and hungry, and he remained that way for much of his first few months. Cole and Elena stumbled through those early days of parenthood in a haze of exhaustion and wonder, learning how to soothe a colicky baby at 3 a.m, how to change diapers, how to function on 2 hours of sleep. But there were also moments of profound beauty. The first time Samuel smiled at Cole, a gummy, lopsided grin that lit up his entire face. The way Elena would sing softly in Spanish while nursing him, old lullabies her mother had sung to her. The evening Cole fell asleep in the rocking chair with Samuel on his chest, and Elena found them there and nearly cried at how right it looked. As Samuel grew from an infant to a toddler, Cole discovered that fatherhood suited him in ways he had never imagined. He loved teaching his son about the world, showing him how to gentle a horse, how to track animals, how to read the weather. He loved the endless questions, the boundless curiosity, the way Samuel looked at him like he could solve any problem. Elena watched her husband and son together and felt her heart swell with love. This was the family she had dreamed of, the life she had feared she would never have after her father's death. Cole had given her so much more than protection that day in the town square. He had given her hope, love, and a future worth living. The ranch continued to prosper over the years. By 1883, they had expanded their holdings, purchasing adjacent land and building a larger house to accommodate their growing family. In the spring of that year, Elena gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rebecca after Cole's sister. She had Elena's dark eyes and a fierce temperament that reminded Cole so much of her namesake that it sometimes took his breath away. Raising 2 young children while running a ranch was exhausting work, but Cole and Elena tackled it together the way they tackled everything. They hired a housekeeper to help with the domestic tasks, a young widow named Sarah, who was grateful for the work and the safe place to live. They took turns with the children, so that each of them could focus on the ranch work when needed. They made time for each other, stealing quiet moments whenever they could, remembering that they were partners and lovers as well as parents. As the children grew older, Cole began taking Samuel with him on rides around the ranch, teaching him the skills he would need to one day run the operation himself. Samuel was a bright, eager student who absorbed everything like a sponge. Rebecca, meanwhile, attached herself to Elena, learning to train horses and showing a natural gift that surpassed even her mother's. One evening, when Samuel was 7 and Rebecca was 4, the family sat together at dinner, and Elena announced that another baby was on the way. Samuel cheered, excited at the prospect of being a big brother again. Rebecca looked suspicious, as if not sure how she felt about having to share her parents' attention with yet another sibling. Cole reached across the table and took Elena's hand, marveling at how blessed he was. Their third child, a boy they named Thomas, was born in early 1884. He was a calm, easy baby compared to his siblings, content to watch the world with serious eyes. As the family of 5 settled into their new rhythm, Cole often found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the man he had been before he met Elena, a drifter running from pain and refusing to plant roots. He thought about the moment he had seen her standing on that gallows, proud and unbroken, and how something in him had recognized something in her. He thought about the choice he had made to intervene, not knowing that it would change the entire course of his life. Sometimes he still felt the pull of the open road, the desire to see what was beyond the next horizon. But it was a distant thing now, easily ignored, because every time the wanderlust whispered to him, he would look at Elena and their children and know that this was where he belonged. This ranch, this family, this life they had built together from ashes and adversity. Elena felt similarly blessed. The nightmares about the hanging had faded over the years, though she still occasionally woke with the phantom feeling of rope around her neck. But when she did, Cole was always there, and his presence was enough to chase the shadows away. She had built a good life from the ruins of tragedy, and she never took it for granted. As the years passed, the Hartley Ranch became known as one of the most successful in the territory. They treated their workers fairly, paid honest wages, and earned a reputation for integrity that brought them respect, from even those who might have looked down on a mixed couple in a less progressive area. Cole and Elena made a point of helping others when they could, never forgetting what it felt like to be desperate and alone. When Samuel turned 14, a young Mexican girl came to the ranch looking for work. Her name was Isabella, and she had run away from an abusive situation with nowhere else to go. Elena took one look at the girl's frightened eyes and defiant chin and saw herself all those years ago. She hired Isabella on the spot and gave her a safe place to live and work. Cole understood immediately why Elena had done it and supported the decision without question. This was who they were now, people who stood up for those who could not stand up for themselves. It was a legacy they wanted to pass on to their children. By the time Samuel was 18, he had grown into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's kind heart. He had met a local rancher's daughter named Catherine, and Cole and Elena could see the same kind of love growing between them that they had found in each other. When Samuel asked for their blessing to propose, they gave it gladly, and the wedding took place in the summer of 1895 under the same cottonwood tree where Cole and Elena had been married 16 years earlier. Rebecca, at 15, was already drawing attention from young men throughout the territory, much to Cole's dismay and Elena's amusement. She had inherited her mother's beauty and her father's stubborn streak, a combination that made her both enchanting and impossible. She had no interest in settling down yet, she told her parents firmly. She wanted to see the world and have adventures first. Cole understood that desire more than he cared to admit. Thomas, now 11, was quieter than his siblings, but every bit as capable. He had a gift for numbers and planning that suggested he might one day take over the business side of the ranch. He liked to spend his evenings reading in front of the fire, and Cole would often join him, the two of them comfortable in companionable silence. On a warm evening in October 1896, Cole and Elena celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary. The children had taken themselves off to various activities, leaving their parents alone for the evening. They sat on the porch, the same spot where so many important moments of their life together had unfolded, and watched the sun set over the land they had built together. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked, leaning against Cole's shoulder. Giving up your freedom to stay here with me? Cole wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close. Not for a single moment, he said honestly. You are my freedom, Elena. Before I met you, I was a prisoner of my own pain, running from place to place, but never finding peace. You gave me something to fight for, something to build. You gave me a home. You gave me my life, Elena replied softly. Literally and figuratively. When I think about what might have happened if you had not stopped that day in the square, if you had just ridden on by, it terrifies me. Everything good I have now, everything I love, exists because you chose to be brave when you did not have to be. You were the brave one, Cole corrected. I just recognized it and could not let it be snuffed out. You would have found a way to survive, even without me. Maybe, Elena said, but I would not have thrived. That is what you gave me, Cole. The chance not just to survive, but to truly live. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The desert air was cooling, carrying the scent of sage and mesquite. From somewhere in the distance came the lonely call of a coyote. Tell me the story again, Elena said suddenly. About the day we met. I never get tired of hearing it. Cole smiled. He had told this story countless times over the years, to their children and to visitors. But he never tired of it either, because it was their story, the foundation of everything they had become. I was riding into Tombstone with no particular destination in mind, he began, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. I had been drifting for weeks, maybe longer. Time had stopped meaning much to me by then. As I approached the town square, I saw a crowd gathered, and I was curious enough to stop and see what was happening. That was when I saw you. What did you think when you first saw me? Elena asked, even though she knew the answer. I thought you were the most magnificent thing I had ever seen, Cole said, his voice warm with the memory. You were standing on that platform with a rope around your neck, and everyone was waiting for you to break, to beg, to give them a show. But you just stood there with your head high and fire in your eyes, refusing to give them the satisfaction. In that moment, I knew I could not let you die. It would have been a crime against the world. You made up that whole story about the cattle thieves, Elena said, laughing. I still cannot believe that worked. I am as surprised as you are, Cole admitted. But sometimes you have to take a leap of faith and hope the universe catches you. In our case, it did. And then you stayed, Elena said, turning to look up at him. Even though you had no reason to, even though you were afraid of being tied down, you stayed for me. I stayed because leaving would have been the real mistake, Cole said, cupping her face in his hand. You were the answer to a question I had been asking my whole life. I just had not known how to phrase the question until I met you. Elena kissed him, a slow, sweet kiss that still held all the passion of their younger days, but was now tempered with the deep comfort of true partnership. They had been through so much together, had built a life and a family, had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, and through it all, the love between them had only grown stronger. As they sat there together, wrapped in each other's arms under the vast Arizona sky, Cole thought about the path that had led him here. All the pain and loss, all the wandering and searching had been necessary to bring him to this moment, to this woman, to this life. He would not change a single thing. I love you, Elena Hartley, he said, using her married name the way he always did, with pride and possessiveness. For as long as I draw breath, I will love you. And I love you, Cole Hartley, Elena replied, her voice steady and sure. Thank you for seeing me that day. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for staying. Always, Cole promised. Always. The years continued to flow by, bringing new joys and occasional sorrows as life always does. They watched Samuel and Catherine welcome their first child, a granddaughter named Elena after her grandmother, and Cole marveled at how strange and wonderful it was to be called Grandpa. Rebecca eventually found love with a traveling photographer who shared her wanderlust, and they divided their time between the ranch and various adventures around the country, sending letters full of stories that delighted the whole family. Thomas attended university in San Francisco to study business, returning home to help modernize the ranch's operations and expand their markets. Through it all, Cole and Elena remained the steady center of their family's universe, the example their children and grandchildren looked to for what love and partnership should be. They still worked the ranch together, though they had turned over much of the day-to-day operations to Samuel and Thomas. They still took long rides into the desert, just the two of them, finding peace in the open spaces and each other's company. They still talked late into the night about everything and nothing, their conversations as rich and varied as they had been in those early days. As they entered their 60s, age began to slow them down in ways neither wanted to acknowledge. Cole's hair had gone silver, and his joints ached on cold mornings. Elena's vision was not as sharp as it once was, and she tired more easily. But they faced these changes the way they faced everything else, together and with grace. One spring morning in 1908, 30 years after the day they met, Cole woke to find Elena still asleep beside him, her face peaceful in the early light. He watched her for a long moment, this woman who had given him everything, and felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it brought tears to his eyes. She had saved him every bit as much as he had saved her that day in Tombstone. They had given each other the gift of a second chance, of a life worth living, of love that endured through all challenges. It had not always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Elena stirred and opened her eyes, smiling when she saw him watching her. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice still husky with sleep. "Good morning, my love," Cole replied, leaning over to kiss her forehead. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Elena said, reaching up to touch his face. "We found each other when we both needed finding. That is not luck, Cole. That is fate." "Do you believe in fate?" Cole asked, genuinely curious. Elena thought about it for a moment. "I believe that certain souls are meant to find each other," she said slowly. "I believe that you and I were always going to meet, somehow, somewhere. Maybe not in Tombstone, maybe not on that day, but eventually. Because we fit, Cole. We make sense together in a way that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with truth." Cole pulled her close, holding her against his chest and feeling the steady beat of her heart. "I believe that too," he said quietly. "I believe that everything I went through, all the pain and loss, led me to you, and that makes it all worthwhile." They lay there together as the sun rose higher and the day began, two souls who had found their home in each other and built a life that would endure long after they were gone. Their love story had started with an act of courage and defiance, with a woman who refused to beg and a man who admired her pride enough to risk everything. It had grown into something beautiful and lasting, a testament to the power of choosing love, even when life had given every reason to choose fear. As the morning light filled their bedroom and the sounds of the ranch waking up drifted through the window, Cole and Elena faced another day together, still partners, still lovers, still best friends after all these years. And in that moment, they knew they had won. They had taken the worst life could throw at them and turned it into something precious. They had loved deeply and well, and that love had created a legacy that would ripple through generations. This was their happy ending, earned through struggle and sacrifice, through honesty and trust, through the daily choice to keep choosing each other. And it was perfect. The seasons turned, bringing the family together for holidays and celebrations. There were more grandchildren, each one precious and unique, carrying forward the best of Cole and Elena in their phases and personalities. There were weddings and birthdays, losses and triumphs, all the events that make up a well-lived life. And through everything, Cole and Elena remained devoted to each other, their love a beacon that guided their family through both calm waters and rough storms. When Cole turned 70 in 1912, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. Children ran through the yards, their laughter echoing off the buildings that Cole had built with his own hands. His sons and daughters surrounded him, each of them successful and happy in their own right. And at the center of it all was Elena, still beautiful to him, despite the silver in her hair and the lines time had etched on her face. As the party wound down and the family began to depart, Samuel pulled his father aside. "Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know that you and Mom have shown me what it means to be a good man and a good husband. Everything I am, everything I have accomplished, I owe to your example." Cole embraced his son, proud of the man he had become. "You gave yourself credit for that, Samuel," he said. "Your mother and I just tried to point you in the right direction. You did the hard work of becoming who you are." "Still," Samuel insisted, "I am grateful for everything, for the life you built, for the family you created, for showing us all that love is worth fighting for." Cole nodded, too moved to speak. Later that evening, as he and Elena prepared for bed, He told her about the conversation. "We did good, did not we?" Elena said, a statement more than a question. "We did better than good," Cole replied. "We did extraordinary." As they drifted off to sleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been for more than 3 decades, both of them felt the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. They had faced death and chose life. They had known despair and chose hope. They had every reason to be bitter and chose love instead. And that choice, made over and over again every single day, had made all the difference. The years continued their gentle march forward, bringing with them the inevitable changes that time demands. But the core of who Cole and Elena were to each other never wavered. They were still the woman who refused to beg, and the man who admired her pride. They were still the souls who had recognized each other in that moment of crisis and decided to build something beautiful together. They were still, and would always be, each other's home. On a warm autumn evening in 1915, as they sat on their beloved porch watching another spectacular Arizona sunset, Elena turned to Cole and said, "If I could go back to that day in Tombstone, knowing everything that would happen, all the joy and pain and work and love, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Every single moment." Cole squeezed her hand, his gray eyes soft with understanding. "So would I," he said. "So would I." And as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began their nightly dance across the sky, 2 people who had found each other against all odds sat together in perfect peace, their story complete, their love eternal, their hearts forever intertwined. They had built a legacy not just of land and cattle and children, but of courage and compassion, of choosing love in the face of hatred, of refusing to let circumstances define them. They had shown everyone who knew them that true love was not a fairy tale, but a daily practice, a series of small choices that added up to something magnificent. And in doing so, they had created a happy ending that would echo through the generations, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and love could prevail. Their story, which began with a rope and a gallows, had transformed into a tale of redemption, partnership, and enduring devotion that would be told around family dinner tables for 100 years to come. It was a story of the Wild West, but more importantly, it was a story of the human heart and its limitless capacity for resilience and love.